Listen carefully, because almost nobody says this out loud. For most of your life, you were told a very simple story. Work hard, achieve success, then you will be happy. It sounded logical. Study harder than everyone else, climb higher than everyone else, build a life that looks impressive, and happiness would follow like a loyal shadow. But for millions of people, something strange happened. They followed the formula. They studied. They sacrificed. They achieved. And yet, the happiness never arrived. Or worse, it arrived briefly, then disappeared, leaving behind a quiet, uncomfortable question: why do I feel empty, even after succeeding? This audiobook is about that question. Welcome to The Hidden Cost of Success. In this journey, we will explore something society rarely discusses: the uncomfortable truth that success and happiness are not the same thing. And sometimes, the pursuit of success quietly steals the very happiness you were chasing. You see it everywhere. A professional who earns more money than they ever imagined, but cannot sleep at night. An entrepreneur who built a thriving company, but lost their relationships along the way. A high achiever who checks every box of success, yet feels strangely disconnected from life. On paper, their lives look perfect, but internally, something feels missing. If this resonates with you, pause for a moment. You are not alone. Psychologists have studied happiness for decades and discovered something surprising. Only a small portion of our happiness comes from external circumstances like money, status, or achievements. Much more comes from our habits, mindset, and relationships. In other words, success can improve your life, but it cannot guarantee happiness. And yet, our culture continues selling the same promise: more achievements, more recognition, more productivity, the next promotion, the next milestone, the next version of success, always the next thing. But what if the problem isn't that you haven't achieved enough? What if the problem is the story itself? What if happiness was never waiting at the end of success, but somewhere entirely different? Because there is a hidden paradox in modern life. The people who chase success most aggressively often lose connection with the very things that create happiness: presence, relationships, peace, meaning, and slowly, achievement replaces experience. Life becomes a scoreboard, another promotion, another award, another goal, until one day you stop and realize something uncomfortable. You spent years climbing a mountain without asking whether it was the right mountain. This realization hits many people in their late 20s or 30s, a quiet identity crisis. From the outside, everything looks stable: a career, a routine, a life that appears successful. But internally, there is a whisper: is this really what I want? Psychologists sometimes call this a noiseless crisis. Your life looks fine on paper, but something inside feels misaligned. And this is where the real journey begins. Because the question is not simply, how do I become successful? The deeper question is, how do I build a life that actually feels good to live? This audiobook is not anti-success. Success can be meaningful. Achievement can be fulfilling. Ambition can build incredible things, but only when success serves your life instead of replacing it. In the chapters ahead, we will explore why success alone cannot create happiness, why ambition can secretly become addiction, why many high achievers feel lost after reaching their goals, why identity crises appear in adulthood, why happiness requires something success cannot provide, and most importantly, how to build a life where achievement and happiness work together instead of competing. Because the truth nobody tells you is this: success is not the destination. It is only one piece of the journey. And if you do not understand the hidden cost of success, you might spend years chasing a life that looks impressive, but feels empty. But there is good news. Once you understand the difference between success and happiness, you can design a life that includes both. And that discovery begins with something most people never question: the definition of success itself. Because before we talk about happiness, we must ask a dangerous question. Whose definition of success are you chasing? That question might change everything. The definition trap. Before we talk about happiness, we need to confront something uncomfortable. Most people never actually choose their definition of success. They inherit it quietly, gradually, from parents, from teachers, from social media, from culture. And the definition usually sounds something like this: earn more, own more, achieve more, become impressive. But here's the dangerous part. When you inherit someone else's definition of success, you may spend years building a life that doesn't belong to you. Imagine a runner. They wake up early. They train harder than everyone else. They sacrifice weekends. They sacrifice relationships. Finally, they cross the finish line, exhausted, victorious. And then they realize something terrifying. They ran the wrong race. This happens more often than you think. Many people discover it in their 30s, sometimes their 40s, sometimes even later. They built the career they were supposed to want, the house they were supposed to buy, the lifestyle they were supposed to admire. But internally, something feels hollow. Not because they failed, because they succeeded at something that was never truly theirs. You see, success has a way of disguising misalignment. When life is hard, struggle explains everything. You tell yourself, once I make it, things will feel better. But when success arrives and the emptiness remains, there are no excuses left, only questions. And the most important one is this: why did I want this life in the first place? Many high achievers never ask this question. They simply continue climbing. More achievements, more pressure, more responsibility. Because stopping feels terrifying. Stopping means confronting the possibility that you spent years chasing the wrong thing. But avoiding the question does not solve the problem. It only postpones it. Sooner or later, the question returns, usually in quiet moments, late at night, on long drives, during moments when the noise of the world finally fades. You begin wondering, is this actually making me happy? This is where many people become confused, because success often brings pleasure, but pleasure is not the same as happiness. Pleasure is temporary: a new car, a promotion, recognition, applause. Each achievement delivers a brief surge of satisfaction. But the feeling fades quickly. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Humans rapidly adjust to improvements in life. What once felt extraordinary soon becomes normal. Then the mind begins chasing the next improvement, the next reward, the next achievement, and the cycle continues. This is why many successful people feel trapped in what is sometimes called the achievement treadmill. Run faster, achieve more. Feel the same, run faster again. But happiness works differently. Happiness grows from experiences that do not fade as quickly. Connection, purpose, presence, meaning. And ironically, the relentless pursuit of success often pushes these things aside. Work replaces presence. Ambition replaces connection. Goals replace meaning. Until life begins feeling like a project instead of an experience. This is the hidden cost of success. Not failure, not stress, but disconnection from life itself. Imagine standing at the top of a mountain. You achieved everything you set out to achieve. But the view feels strangely empty, not because the view is bad, but because the journey left you disconnected from yourself. That realization is painful, but it is also powerful, because it opens a door to a different question. Instead of asking, how do I become more successful? You begin asking, what kind of life actually feels meaningful? That question changes everything. Because meaningful success looks very different from inherited success. It might involve more time instead of more money, more connection instead of more recognition, more creativity instead of more status. But discovering that kind of success requires something most people avoid: reflection. You must slow down long enough to examine your own values. What actually matters to you? What kind of life would feel meaningful even if nobody applauded? What kind of success would still feel valuable even if no one noticed? These questions are uncomfortable because they challenge everything society teaches, but they also unlock something powerful: authenticity. The moment when your ambitions begin aligning with your true values. And when that happens, success and happiness stop competing. They begin supporting each other. But there is still a deeper problem we must address, because even when people achieve success that aligns with their values, many still struggle with happiness. Why? Because the human brain has a hidden tendency, one that silently sabotages fulfillment. It is the belief that happiness must be earned later, after the next milestone, after the next goal, after the next level of success. In the next chapter, we will explore the dangerous illusion called the arrival fallacy, the belief that happiness lives somewhere in the future, and why that belief keeps millions of people running forever. The promise and the paradox. Most people spend their entire lives chasing success, the promotion, the business, the recognition, the bigger house, the applause of the world. We are taught that success is the destination, that once you reach it, happiness will finally arrive. But here is the uncomfortable truth few people talk about. Some of the most successful people in the world are not happy, and some of the happiest people you will ever meet never chased success at all. So, what is going on? Why does the pursuit of achievement sometimes lead to emptiness? Why do people who appear to have everything still feel like something is missing? And, more importantly, how do you build a life where success and happiness can actually coexist? Welcome to this audiobook. Success versus happiness. The truth nobody tells you. In the next chapters, we're going to explore a truth that society rarely admits. Success has a hidden cost, and happiness has a hidden path. You will discover why chasing success alone often creates burnout, why happiness without purpose can feel hollow, why the most fulfilled people in the world follow a completely different formula. You will learn how identity shapes ambition, why comparison silently destroys joy, why your 20s and 30s often feel like a confusing crossroads, and how to design a life where achievement and inner peace grow together instead of fighting each other. Because the real goal of life is not simply to succeed, and it is not simply to feel happy. The real goal is to build a life where both exist in balance. But before we can reach that balance, we must first understand the trap that millions of people fall into without realizing it. The trap called the success illusion. And once you see this illusion clearly, you will never chase success the same way again. So take a deep breath. Set aside everything you thought you knew about achievement, because this journey is about to challenge the way you measure your life. And the first lesson begins with a question most people are afraid to ask. What if success is not what you think it is? Chapter 1. The Success Illusion. When we are young, the formula seems simple. Work hard, study harder, get the grades, get the job, earn the money, build the life, and then happiness will follow. This story is repeated everywhere. Parents repeat it. Teachers repeat it. Social media amplifies it. But here is what rarely gets mentioned. Success and happiness are not the same thing. They are built by completely different systems inside your mind. Success is external. Happiness is internal. Success is measured by results. Happiness is measured by experience. Success is visible. Happiness is invisible. And when people confuse these two systems, they spend years climbing ladders that lead to the wrong building. Imagine someone in their early 20s, ambitious, focused, determined to build something great. They sacrifice sleep. They sacrifice weekends. They push harder than everyone around them. And eventually, it works. The promotions come. The income grows. The respect increases. From the outside, it looks like they are winning. But inside, something strange begins to happen. The excitement fades faster each time. The achievements feel smaller. The pressure grows heavier because success creates a powerful psychological effect. Every time you reach a new level, your brain resets the baseline. The achievement that once felt extraordinary becomes normal. And suddenly, you need the next goal, and the next, and the next. This is called the hedonic treadmill. The faster you run, the faster the finish line moves. So people begin working even harder. More hours, more pressure, more expectations. But the feeling they are chasing never fully arrives. And slowly, a quiet question begins forming in the back of their mind. Why doesn't this feel the way I thought it would? This moment confuses many people because they believe the problem must be themselves. They assume they are not grateful enough, not motivated enough, not disciplined enough. But the truth is something very different. The problem is not their effort. The problem is the belief that success automatically creates happiness. It does not. Success can amplify happiness, but it cannot manufacture it. And understanding this distinction changes everything. Because the goal of life is not to abandon success. The goal is to understand how success and happiness interact. Like two forces that must be balanced. Too much focus on success, and happiness disappears. Too much focus on comfort, and purpose disappears. So the real question becomes, how do you build a life where ambition fuels happiness instead of destroying it? To answer that question, we need to understand something even deeper. Because the real battle between success and happiness does not happen in your career. It happens inside your identity. And most people never realize this until they reach their late 20s or early 30s, when something inside them begins to change. Something quiet, something unsettling, something that feels like a silent crisis, a moment when the old motivation stops working and the question appears, who am I actually doing all of this for? That moment is where the real journey begins. Part 2, The Silent Crisis, chapters 3 to 4. There is a moment that many people experience somewhere between their mid-20s and their mid-30s. It doesn't happen suddenly. There is no dramatic event, no obvious disaster. From the outside, life might even look fine. You have a job, you pay your bills, maybe you are building a career, maybe you even achieved goals you once dreamed about. But inside, something feels strangely quiet, not peaceful, not calm, just empty. A feeling that something is missing, even though everything seems to be going according to plan. This is what psychologists sometimes call a silent crisis, a crisis that makes no noise. No one around you notices it, but internally it feels like standing in a room where the lights have slowly dimmed. You begin asking questions that never appeared before. Why am I doing this? Why does everyone seem to be racing towards something I'm not sure I even want? And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all, is this really the life I chose, or the life I was told to pursue? Chapter 3. The Life Script. Every society writes an invisible script for its people, a sequence of expectations, a roadmap for what a successful life is supposed to look like. The script usually goes something like this: study hard, get into the right school, choose a practical career, work relentlessly, climb the ladder, earn more, upgrade your lifestyle, repeat. At first, this script feels helpful. It provides direction, structure, momentum. But the problem with scripts is that they rarely ask a very important question. Is this what you actually want? Most people never pause long enough to ask. Because the script keeps moving. There is always another step, another milestone, another expectation, and before you know it, years pass. You look up and realize you've been following a path designed by everyone except yourself. This realization can feel terrifying, because if the script is not your own, then what is? The truth is, discovering your own direction requires something the success script rarely allows: exploration. And exploration requires uncertainty. It requires trying things that might fail, choosing paths that may not make sense to others, which is exactly why so many people avoid it. They stay inside the script, because even if the script feels empty, at least it feels safe. But safety without meaning eventually creates dissatisfaction, and dissatisfaction eventually forces a deeper question, a question that can change everything. Chapter 4. Identity before achievement. One of the biggest misunderstandings about success is the belief that motivation comes from goals. That if you just set the right target, your drive will magically appear. But real motivation does not begin with goals. It begins with identity, who you believe you are. Because identity answers a much deeper question than success ever can. What kind of life actually belongs to me? Think about the people who seem to have unstoppable energy, the ones who wake up excited, the ones who pursue their goals with relentless passion. From the outside, it may look like they are simply disciplined. But something deeper is happening. Their work aligns with their identity. Their effort is not forced, it is expressed. And that difference changes everything. When someone knows who they are, their ambition becomes focused. Their decisions become clearer. Their energy becomes sustainable. But when someone does not know who they are, success becomes exhausting, because every decision feels uncertain. Every goal feels borrowed. Every achievement feels strangely disconnected. This is why so many people reach impressive milestones and still feel unfulfilled. They built success before building identity. And success without identity is like constructing a beautiful house on unstable ground. From the outside, it looks impressive, but internally, it feels fragile. The good news is that identity is not something you discover once and keep forever. Identity is something you build through action, through choices, through exploration, through courage. And this leads us to one of the most important truths about happiness and success. The path to both does not begin with achievement. It begins with self-direction, learning how to make choices based on who you are becoming instead of who the world expects you to be. But making that transition is not easy because it requires stepping away from something extremely powerful, the pressure of comparison. And comparison might be the most dangerous force standing between success and happiness. Dear friend, allow me to interrupt for a moment. Our team is currently working on improving our channel and videos. May we ask you, dear viewer, what you like about our videos, or perhaps what you would like to see in our videos? Perhaps a different video format or a different format for presenting audiobooks. Be skeptical. Your skeptical expert opinion can help us improve our videos even more. Thank you very much. We look forward to your comments under the video. Let's continue. Part 3. The Comparison Trap. Chapters 5 to 6. There is a silent force shaping the way millions of people measure their lives. It appears harmless at first. It even feels motivating. But over time, it quietly drains joy from the human experience. That force is comparison. And in the modern world, comparison has become constant. A generation ago, people compared themselves mostly to neighbors, co-workers, or friends. Today, you are comparing yourself to millions of people every single day, through screens, through feeds, through endless highlight reels of success. You see someone your age starting a company, another buying their first house, another traveling the world, another announcing a promotion, another building an audience, another achieving something extraordinary. And slowly, without realizing it, your brain begins constructing a dangerous narrative. They are ahead. They figured it out. I'm falling behind. But here is the reality most people never consider. You are comparing your entire life to someone else's most curated moments. You are comparing your struggles to their victories, your confusion, to their clarity, your beginning, to their highlight reel, and this creates an illusion that distorts how you see yourself. Because comparison does not measure truth. It measures perception, and perception can be dangerously misleading. Chapter 5. The Invisible Race. Imagine running a race where no one knows where the finish line is. Some runners sprint, some runners jog, some runners stop to rest, some runners change direction entirely. But everyone keeps looking sideways, checking how fast the others are moving, checking who appears ahead, checking who seems to be winning. Now imagine doing this for years. Eventually, the race stops being about the destination. It becomes about keeping up. And this is what modern success culture has quietly become. An invisible race, a race where people feel pressure to constantly prove that they are progressing. More success, more achievements, more validation, more proof that they are moving forward. But this race has a hidden cost. When you constantly measure your progress against others, you lose connection with your own path. Your decisions stop being guided by curiosity or passion or purpose. Instead, they become guided by one question. What will make me look successful? And once that question takes control, happiness begins disappearing because the life you build is no longer truly yours. It becomes a performance, a carefully constructed image designed to compete in the invisible race. But the people who eventually escape this trap discover something powerful. The race was never necessary because life is not a competition, it is a construction project. You are not racing against others. You are building something unique, a life that reflects your values, your curiosity, your purpose. And once you stop running the invisible race, you finally gain the freedom to ask a far more important question. Chapter 6. What does success actually mean? Ask 10 different people to define success. You will likely hear 10 different answers. Some will say wealth, some will say freedom, some will say recognition, some will say influence, some will say security, and some will say happiness. But here's the interesting thing. Most people never define success for themselves. They inherit definitions. Definitions passed down through culture, through family expectations, through social pressure, through the stories we hear about what a successful life should look like. And because of this, millions of people spend decades pursuing goals that were never truly theirs. They build careers they don't love. They chase lifestyles they don't enjoy. They accumulate achievements that feel strangely empty, because success without alignment always feels hollow. Alignment means your achievements match your values. Your work reflects your curiosity. Your effort contributes to something meaningful. Without that alignment, success becomes exhausting. You can achieve incredible things and still feel disconnected from your life. But when alignment exists, something remarkable happens. The same effort that once felt draining begins to feel energizing because you're no longer pushing yourself towards someone else's definition of success. You are moving towards your own. And this realization marks the beginning of a major shift, a shift from chasing success to designing a meaningful life. But this shift requires confronting another uncomfortable truth. Because while society teaches us how to achieve success, very few people ever teach us how to build happiness. And happiness operates by completely different rules. Rules most people never learn until much later in life. Part 4, The Architecture of Happiness. Chapters 7 to 8. Most people are taught how to chase success. Very few people are taught how happiness actually works. And that misunderstanding creates a powerful illusion. We assume happiness will appear after success, after the promotion, after the financial breakthrough, after the recognition, after the moment when everything finally comes together. But happiness does not operate like a reward waiting at the finish line. Happiness operates like a system that must be maintained, built, protected. And if that system is neglected while chasing success, no amount of achievement can replace it. To understand this, imagine your life as a structure supported by several pillars. Achievement is only one of them, but happiness depends on many more. Connection, meaning, growth, health, presence, gratitude. When too much energy flows into one pillar while the others weaken, the structure becomes unstable. And this is exactly what happens to many high achievers. They build extraordinary success, but the rest of the structure quietly erodes, relationships weaken, health declines, presence disappears, meaning fades, and eventually the structure begins to shake. From the outside, everything still looks impressive, but inside, something feels deeply wrong, because happiness was never meant to be built on achievement alone. It is built on balance. Chapter 7, The Happiness. Misunderstanding. Let's pause and ask a question few people ever ask honestly. What is happiness? Not the social media version, not the motivational quote version. The real version. Happiness is not constant pleasure, it is not permanent excitement, and it is not the absence of problems. Real happiness is something much quieter. It is a sense of inner stability, a feeling that your life makes sense, a sense that the direction you're moving feels right. It is the ability to experience difficult moments without losing your center, and the ability to experience joyful moments without needing them to last forever. Happiness is not the elimination of struggle. It is the presence of meaning within struggle. And this is where success sometimes becomes dangerous. Because when people chase achievement without meaning, they experience effort without fulfillment. They work harder, push further, sacrifice more. But the emotional reward never quite matches the effort, so they push even harder. And eventually, something inside them begins asking a quiet question. What is all of this for? That question is not a weakness, it is a signal that the mind is searching for something deeper than achievement. It is searching for meaning. Chapter 8. The meaning. Gap meaning is the missing ingredient in the success equation. Without meaning, success becomes hollow. But when meaning exists, even difficult work becomes fulfilling. Meaning answers a simple but powerful question. Why does this matter? Not just to the world, but to you. Meaning appears when your actions connect to something larger than yourself. Helping others, creating something valuable, solving problems, expressing creativity, improving the lives of people around you. And here is the fascinating part. Meaning does not require extraordinary achievements. Some of the most meaningful lives are built through simple contributions. A teacher helping students grow, a parent raising children with love, a craftsman creating beautiful work, a mentor guiding someone through difficult times. Meaning appears whenever effort connects to purpose. But when people chase success purely for status, validation, or comparison, meaning slowly disappears. And without meaning, happiness becomes extremely difficult to sustain. This is why some of the most financially successful people in the world eventually shift their focus. They begin asking different questions, not just, how can I earn more? But, how can I contribute more? How can I build something meaningful? How can I use success to improve the lives of others? Because meaning transforms success into something deeper. It turns achievement into impact, effort into fulfillment, success into significance. But there is still another powerful factor shaping the relationship between success and happiness, a factor that quietly shapes nearly every decision we make. And that factor is time, because the way we think about time determines the way we pursue success. And misunderstanding time might be one of the biggest reasons people sacrifice happiness without realizing it. Part 5. The Time Illusion. Chapters 9 to 10. One of the greatest misconceptions about success is the belief that we have unlimited time to figure everything out. When people are young, time feels infinite. There is always another year, another opportunity, another chance to fix mistakes. Because of this, many people treat time like a renewable resource. But time is not renewable. It is the only asset in life that moves in one direction, forward, quietly, constantly. And this creates a dangerous illusion, the illusion that happiness can always be postponed. I'll be happy after I finish school. I'll relax after I build my career. I'll enjoy life once I reach financial freedom. I'll spend time with the people I love once things slow down. But here is the reality few people talk about. Life rarely slows down on its own. Responsibilities grow, expectations increase, ambitions expand, and suddenly years pass, while happiness remains permanently scheduled for later. This is what we call the time illusion, the belief that life will eventually become easier if we simply push through the present moment. But happiness does not work that way. Happiness is not something waiting in the future. It is something that must exist within the process. Because if you spend 10 years building a life you hate, you do not magically wake up loving it in year 11. Habits shape identity, and identity shapes experience. If your daily life contains no joy, no meaning, no connection, success will not suddenly create those things. You must build them along the way. To Chapter 9, The Deferred Life Plan. There is a concept sometimes called the deferred life plan. It sounds logical. Sacrifice today. Enjoy tomorrow. Work relentlessly now. Relax later. Delay happiness until success is secured. But this strategy carries a hidden danger, because while you are postponing happiness, life is still happening. Relationships are evolving. Health is changing. Opportunities for connection are passing. And the moments that make life meaningful are quietly disappearing in the background. Now, this does not mean ambition is wrong. Hard work is essential. Building something meaningful often requires sacrifice. But the problem arises when sacrifice becomes permanent, when the pursuit of success eliminates every other dimension of life. Because happiness cannot be permanently postponed without consequences. The mind begins accumulating. Stress, emotional exhaustion grows. Motivation slowly declines. Eventually, people begin feeling disconnected from their own lives, not because they failed, but because they built success while neglecting the experiences that make life fulfilling. And this realization often appears suddenly, a moment where someone pauses and wonders, how did I get so far without feeling satisfied? That moment is not failure. It is awareness, awareness that life must be lived while it is being built, not after. Chapter 10, Redefining Progress. So if success alone cannot guarantee happiness, and happiness cannot be postponed indefinitely, then what does real progress look like? Real progress is not measured by income alone. It is measured by alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions. Alignment between your work and your curiosity. Alignment between your ambition and your well-being. Think about progress like a compass rather than a finish line. A compass does not tell you when you have arrived. It simply tells you whether you are moving in the right direction. When your life aligns with your values, even difficult work feels meaningful. Challenges feel purposeful. Effort feels worthwhile. But when your direction is misaligned, even success feels strangely empty. This is why some people achieve enormous accomplishments yet still feel lost. They moved quickly. They achieved impressive milestones, but they never stopped to check the compass. The most fulfilled individuals do something differently. They pause. They reflect. They adjust. They ask themselves questions like, is the life I am building the life I actually want? Does my success support the person I want to become? Am I moving toward meaning or just toward recognition? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are essential, because success without reflection can lead you very far in the wrong direction. And once someone learns to measure progress through alignment instead of comparison, Something remarkable begins to happen. Ambition becomes healthier, goals become clearer, and happiness stops feeling like a distant reward. It becomes something that exists within the journey itself. But there is still another challenge standing between success and happiness. A challenge that quietly shapes how people experience their achievements. It is the voice inside the mind. The voice that says, "Not enough, not yet, keep going." And understanding that voice may be the key to finding peace within ambition. Part 6. The Voice of Not Enough Chapters 11 to 12. There is a voice inside the human mind that very few people talk about openly. It is not loud. It does not shout. But it is persistent, quiet, relentless. And it often appears at the exact moment when you achieve something you once dreamed about. You reach the milestone. You complete the project. You earn the promotion. You build the thing you once believed would change everything. For a moment, there is satisfaction, relief, even pride. But then the voice returns. Good, but not enough. You could have done more. Look at what they're doing. You're still behind. And just like that, the achievement begins losing its emotional weight. This voice is one of the hidden enemies of happiness, because it keeps success permanently out of reach. It turns every victory into a stepping stone for the next demand. And while ambition can be powerful, unchecked ambition can become a prison. Chapter 11. The Achievement Addiction. Achievement releases dopamine. Dopamine is the brain's reward signal. Every time you reach a goal, solve a problem, or accomplish something meaningful, your brain experiences a surge of satisfaction. At first, this is motivating. It encourages progress, growth, exploration. But over time, something subtle begins to happen. The brain adapts. The same achievements that once felt incredible begin feeling normal. The same rewards that once felt exciting begin feeling routine. So the mind searches for the next challenge, the next win, the next validation, and this creates a cycle. Achievement to reward, to adaptation to new target. Achievement to reward, to adaptation to new target. At first, this cycle feels productive, but eventually it becomes addictive. Not because people want success, but because they become dependent on the feeling of chasing it. They stop enjoying their achievements. They start needing the next one. And when this happens, life becomes an endless pursuit of more. More progress, more recognition, more validation, more proof that they are still moving forward. But the emotional satisfaction never lasts, because the brain keeps resetting the baseline. The finish line keeps moving, and happiness keeps waiting on the other side of the next goal. This is why some people accomplish extraordinary things and still feel restless. Not because success failed them, but because they never learned how to pause inside success. They never learned how to experience achievement without immediately chasing the next one. And without that pause, life becomes an endless treadmill, always moving, never arriving. Tom Park, Chapter 12. Learning to pause. One of the most underrated skills in modern life is the ability to pause, not stop forever, not abandon ambition, but pause long enough to experience the present moment. Most people skip this step entirely. They move directly from one objective to the next. Goal, achievement, next goal, next achievement. And while this may look impressive from the outside, internally it creates exhaustion, because the mind never receives closure. It never receives the chance to register progress. Imagine climbing a mountain but refusing to look at the view, step after step, higher and higher, but never stopping to appreciate the distance you've already traveled. Eventually, the climb begins feeling pointless, not because the mountain is meaningless, but because you never allowed yourself to experience the journey. Pausing changes that. Pausing allows your mind to recognize progress. It allows gratitude to emerge. It allows meaning to settle. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds you that life is happening now, not at the next milestone. This does not mean ambition disappears. In fact, ambition often becomes healthier because it is no longer fueled by insecurity. It becomes fueled by curiosity, exploration, contribution. The healthiest form of ambition is not driven by the fear of being behind. It is driven by the excitement of becoming something new. And once someone learns how to pause within their journey, they begin experiencing success differently. Success stops feeling like a destination. It begins feeling like a process. But there is another truth that many people eventually encounter. Because while ambition can create incredible opportunities, it can also create something unexpected. Loneliness, and the relationship between success and loneliness is something society rarely talks about openly. Yet understanding it may reveal one of the deepest costs of achievement. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Part 7. The Loneliness of Achievement, Chapters 13 to 14. There is a truth about success that almost no one talks about openly. Not because it is rare, but because it is uncomfortable. Sometimes, the higher you climb, the lonelier the journey becomes. At the beginning of life, most people grow together. Friends share similar experiences, similar goals, similar struggles. Everyone is figuring things out at the same pace. But as life unfolds, paths begin to separate. Some people pursue stability. Some pursue creativity. Some pursue family. Some pursue ambition. And those who chase success with intense focus often move into environments that very few people around them understand. Long hours, high expectations, constant pressure, responsibility that grows heavier with every achievement. From the outside, it looks like progress. But internally, something begins to change. Relationships shift. Conversations feel different. Old friendships slowly fade because lives no longer move in the same rhythm. And new relationships sometimes feel transactional, built around opportunity, influence, or advantage, not genuine connection. This is one of the quiet costs of achievement, not because success itself creates loneliness, but because the path toward it often demands sacrifices, time, energy, presence, moments that could have been spent building deeper connections. And over time, some people begin realizing something unexpected. They built the life they dreamed of, but the people they wanted to share it with are no longer there. Estaos. Chapter 13. The Relationship Trade-Off. Every major pursuit in life requires trade-offs. When you focus on building a career, something else receives less attention. When you commit to one direction, another path remains unexplored. This is not failure. It is the natural consequence of choice. But when people pursue success without awareness of these trade-offs, they sometimes lose something incredibly valuable. Relationships. Human connection is one of the most powerful sources of happiness. More powerful than income. More powerful than status. More powerful than recognition. Decades of psychological research consistently show the same result. The people who live the longest, happiest lives are those with strong relationships. Not necessarily the richest, not necessarily the most famous, but the most connected. Because connection fulfills a deep human need, the need to belong, to share experiences, to feel understood. And when success begins replacing connection instead of supporting it, happiness quietly erodes. The challenge is not choosing between success and relationships. The challenge is learning how to pursue ambition without sacrificing connection. And that requires something many ambitious people struggle with: intentional balance. Because relationships do not grow automatically. They require time, attention, presence, listening, moments of vulnerability, moments of laughter, moments where achievement becomes secondary to shared experience. Without those moments, success becomes strangely isolating. But the people who learn to protect connection along their journey often experience something extraordinary. Success becomes more meaningful because it is shared, and shared success multiplies joy. Chapter 14. The Myth of Doing It Alone. Modern culture celebrates the image of the lone achiever, the individual who builds everything through personal determination, the self-made success story. But in reality, no one builds anything alone. Behind every successful person are mentors, friends, family, support systems, people who offered encouragement when motivation faded, people who believed when doubt appeared, people who created emotional stability during uncertain times. Yet many ambitious individuals forget this truth. They begin believing that success requires complete independence. That vulnerability is weakness, that asking for help signals failure. But this mindset slowly isolates them from the very support systems that sustain happiness. Strength does not come from isolation, it comes from connection, from collaboration, from the willingness to share struggles as well as victories. The people who sustain both success and happiness understand this deeply. They build networks of support. They invest time into relationships. They remain humble enough to acknowledge that growth rarely happens in isolation. And when success arrives, they celebrate it with the people who walked beside them. Because achievement alone can feel empty, but shared achievement feels meaningful. Yet even with relationships' balance and purpose, there remains one final misunderstanding about happiness. A misunderstanding that causes many people to chase the wrong emotional target. Because happiness itself is often misunderstood. And once you see what happiness truly is, you may realize that the goal of life was never to be happy all the time. Part 8. The Happiness Paradox. Chapters 15 to 16. There is a strange paradox hidden inside the pursuit of happiness. The harder people try to force happiness, the more it seems to slip away. Many people imagine happiness as a permanent emotional state. A life where stress disappears, problems vanish, everything feels calm, joyful, and satisfying all the time. But that version of happiness does not exist. Not for anyone, not for the most successful people, not for the most peaceful people, not for anyone who has ever lived a meaningful life. Because real life is not built from permanent joy, it is built from contrast. Joy and challenge, excitement and uncertainty, confidence and doubt, moments of celebration and moments of struggle. Trying to eliminate the difficult parts of life does not create happiness. It removes the very experiences that give happiness meaning. Think about the moments in life that feel most meaningful. Finishing something difficult, overcoming a challenge, helping someone through hardship, building something slowly over time. None of those moments are purely comfortable. They contain effort, uncertainty, sometimes even pain. But that mixture of struggle and purpose creates something deeper than temporary pleasure. It creates fulfillment. And fulfillment is far more powerful than happiness alone. Chapter 15, Fulfillment versus Pleasure. Pleasure is immediate. It feels good quickly, comfort, entertainment, distraction, short bursts of satisfaction. Pleasure is easy to access in the modern world. Endless entertainment, constant stimulation, quick rewards. But pleasure fades quickly. And when people chase pleasure alone, they often experience a strange emptiness afterward, because pleasure without meaning feels shallow. Fulfillment works differently. Fulfillment grows slowly. It requires effort, commitment, persistence. But when fulfillment appears, it lasts longer. It creates pride, purpose, a deep sense that what you're doing matters. And here is where success and happiness finally begin to connect. Success driven only by pleasure becomes addictive. Success driven by fulfillment becomes meaningful. The difference is subtle but powerful. Pleasure asks, what feels good right now? Fulfillment asks, what will feel meaningful over time? And the most satisfying lives balance both. Moments of joy, moments of effort, moments of rest, moments of growth. Because life is not meant to be permanently comfortable. It is meant to be engaging. Chapter 16, The Emotional Spectrum. Another misunderstanding about happiness is the belief that negative emotions are signs of failure. Sadness, doubt, frustration, fear. These emotions are often treated as obstacles that must be eliminated. But emotions are signals. They provide information about your life. Fear can signal risk. Frustration can signal misalignment. Sadness can signal loss. Doubt can signal uncertainty or growth. If you try to eliminate these emotions entirely, you lose valuable information. Instead of suppressing them, the goal is learning how to experience them without losing balance. Imagine emotions like weather patterns passing through the mind. Some days are sunny. Some days are cloudy. Some days bring storms. But storms do not last forever. And trying to control the weather only creates exhaustion. Peace appears when you allow emotions to move through you without believing they define you. You can experience stress without believing your life is falling apart. You can experience doubt without believing you are incapable. You can experience sadness without believing happiness is gone forever. This emotional flexibility is one of the greatest predictors of long-term happiness, not constant positivity, but the ability to move through the full emotional spectrum without losing your center. The people who live the most fulfilling lives are not the ones who avoid difficult emotions. They are the ones who learn how to carry them. And once someone understands this emotional balance, something incredible begins to happen. Success stops feeling like a pressure and begins feeling like an expression of who they are. But there is still one critical piece of the puzzle remaining, because even when people understand success, happiness, purpose, and emotion, there is still a hidden force shaping their choices every day, a force called fear. And fear may be the biggest reason people build lives that look successful, but feel disconnected. Part 9. The Fear That Shapes Our Lives. Chapters 17 to 18. There is a force more powerful than ambition, more powerful than talent, more powerful than intelligence, a force that quietly shapes decisions, careers, relationships, and entire lives. That force is fear, not the obvious kind of fear, not the fear of danger, but the subtle fears that guide choices without announcing themselves. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of disappointing others, fear of choosing the wrong path, fear of not being enough, and perhaps the most powerful fear of all, the fear of wasting your life. Ironically, this last fear often causes people to build lives that do not truly belong to them. Because when people fear wasting time, they rush toward the safest version of success, the path that appears most secure, most respected, most socially approved. But safety is not always the same thing as fulfillment. And when fear quietly becomes the architect of your decisions, happiness slowly fades from the blueprint. Chapter 17. The fear of failure. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. Most people treat failure as evidence that something has gone wrong, that a mistake was made, that a path should never have been attempted. But failure is actually information. Information about what works, what doesn't, what needs adjustment, what requires growth. Every meaningful achievement in history has been built on thousands of failures. Businesses collapse before new ones succeed. Artists create hundreds of imperfect pieces before discovering their voice. Inventors test countless ideas before discovering a breakthrough. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the foundation of success. But fear of failure convinces people to avoid experimentation. It pushes them toward predictable paths. Paths where the risk of embarrassment or rejection is minimized. Yet these safe paths often lead to something unexpected, a quiet dissatisfaction. Because while safety protects people from failure, it also protects them from discovery. Discovery of new skills, discovery of new passions, discovery of the life that might have been possible. The people who eventually build both success and happiness learn something important. Failure is not the enemy. Avoiding growth is. And once someone begins treating failure as feedback instead of defeat, fear begins losing its power. But there is another fear even more powerful than failure, the fear of judgment. Chapter 18. The Weight of Other People's Expectations. From childhood, most people learn to measure themselves through the eyes of others. Parents, teachers, peers, society. Approval becomes a reward. Disapproval becomes something to avoid. Over time, these external signals begin shaping identity. People begin choosing careers not because they love them, but because they are respected. They pursue lifestyles not because they feel fulfilling, but because they look impressive. They make decisions based on how they will be perceived rather than how they will feel. And slowly, without realizing it, they build a life designed for an audience. But here is the uncomfortable truth. No matter how successful you become, someone will always judge you. Someone will think you chose the wrong path. Someone will believe you could have done more. Someone will criticize your decisions. Trying to satisfy everyone is impossible, yet millions of people structure their lives around this impossible task. The result is a life filled with achievements, but missing authenticity. Authenticity requires courage. The courage to choose paths that may not make sense to others. The courage to explore interests that others might dismiss. The courage to build a life that reflects your values instead of their expectations. This courage does not appear instantly. It develops slowly, through small decisions, small acts of honesty with yourself, moments where you ask, am I doing this because I want it or because I want approval? Every time you choose authenticity over approval, your life becomes slightly more aligned with your true direction. And over time, those small decisions accumulate. They create a life that feels less like a performance and more like an expression. But even when someone begins living authentically, another challenge still remains, because success itself can create something unexpected, a new kind of pressure, the pressure to maintain success once you have it. And that pressure can quietly transform ambition into anxiety. Part 10. The Pressure of Maintaining Success. Chapters 19 to 20. There is a moment in the life of many high achievers that few people expect. It happens after success arrives, not before. At first, achievement feels exhilarating. The recognition, the opportunities, the sense that hard work has finally paid off. But then something subtle begins to appear, a new kind of pressure, a pressure that whispers a quiet but persistent thought. Now you have something to lose. Before success, the fear was failure. After success, the fear becomes losing what you built. And strangely, this fear can become even heavier than the fear of failure itself. Because when people achieve something meaningful, their identity often becomes attached to it. Their reputation, their status, their sense of worth, their place in the world. Suddenly, the stakes feel higher. Every decision feels more significant. Every mistake feels more dangerous. And slowly, ambition transforms. Instead of building something new, the focus becomes protecting what already exists. But living in protection mode has a hidden cost. It limits growth. It discourages experimentation. It encourages caution instead of curiosity. And the same boldness that once created success begins fading. Chapter 19. The Trap of Perfection. Once people achieve success, many begin believing something dangerous. They believe they must now be perfect. No mistakes, no visible uncertainty, no risk that could damage their reputation. This belief creates enormous pressure because perfection is impossible, and trying to maintain perfection creates constant anxiety. Instead of exploring new ideas, people begin protecting their image. Instead of experimenting, they begin repeating what worked before. Instead of evolving, they begin preserving. But growth requires imperfection. Every innovation begins as something messy. Every creative breakthrough begins as something uncertain. Every meaningful journey contains moments where things do not go according to plan. Perfection freezes growth. And growth is essential not only for success, but for happiness. The individuals who sustain both achievement and fulfillment understand something crucial. Their identity is not their accomplishments. Their identity is their ability to grow. When your identity becomes attached to growth rather than perfection, mistakes lose their power. They become opportunities, signals, stepping stones. Instead of asking, "What if this fails?" you begin asking, "What might I learn from this?" And that shift brings freedom back into the pursuit of success. Freedom to explore, freedom to evolve, freedom to remain curious even after achieving something meaningful. But curiosity alone is not enough to sustain happiness, because long-term fulfillment requires something deeper. It requires purpose. Chapter 20. The Role of Purpose. Purpose is often misunderstood. People imagine it as a single grand mission, a dramatic calling that defines their entire life. But purpose is rarely that dramatic. Purpose often appears quietly in small contributions, helping others grow, solving problems, creating value, sharing knowledge, making life slightly better for the people around you. Purpose answers a powerful question. Why does my effort matter? Without purpose, success feels hollow. Achievements feel temporary. Recognition feels shallow. But when purpose exists, effort becomes meaningful. Even difficult work feels worthwhile, because the energy you invest creates something beyond yourself. Many people discover purpose after achieving success. Once financial stability arrives, once the pressure to survive fades, they begin asking deeper questions. How can I use what I've built to help others? How can my work contribute to something meaningful? How can success become more than just personal gain? This transition is powerful because when success connects with purpose, something remarkable happens. Happiness becomes sustainable. Effort becomes fulfilling. Ambition becomes constructive rather than exhausting. But even purpose alone does not guarantee happiness, because there is still one final ingredient that determines whether success enriches life or consumes it completely. And that ingredient is balance. Understanding balance may be the most important lesson in the entire relationship between success and happiness. Part 11, The Balance That Changes Everything, chapters 21 to 22. There is a point in life where many people begin realizing something surprising. Success alone does not feel complete. Even purpose alone does not feel complete. Something else must exist. Something that allows ambition and peace to coexist. That missing element is balance. Balance does not mean abandoning ambition. It does not mean lowering your goals. It does not mean choosing happiness instead of success. Balance means designing a life where success supports happiness instead of replacing it. Because when ambition consumes every hour, when achievement becomes the only measure of worth, life begins shrinking into a narrow corridor of productivity, work, pressure, goals, repeat. But life was never meant to exist inside a corridor. It was meant to be wide, expansive, full of experiences that remind you that success is only one dimension of being alive. Balance allows that expansion. It creates space for health, for relationships, for reflection, for curiosity, for moments where you stop chasing the future long enough to experience the present. And when these elements exist together, success transforms. It stops feeling like a burden you must carry. It begins feeling like a tool you can use. Chapter 21, The Power of Enough. One of the most powerful words in the pursuit of happiness is a word rarely celebrated in success culture. That word is enough. Modern ambition teaches people to constantly pursue more. More money, more recognition, more influence, more progress. But the pursuit of more can easily become endless because the mind adapts to every level of success. The moment something becomes normal, the next target appears. Without the concept of enough, success becomes an infinite chase. And infinite chases never produce peace. The people who sustain both success and happiness eventually reach an important realization. They define what enough means for them. Enough income, enough work, enough recognition, enough responsibility. Once these thresholds are defined, something remarkable happens. Ambition becomes healthier, because growth is no longer driven by insecurity. It becomes driven by curiosity, contribution, creativity. Instead of chasing success to prove something, people begin building success because they enjoy the process. This shift creates emotional freedom. The freedom to appreciate what you already have. The freedom to stop comparing constantly. The freedom to pursue goals that align with meaning rather than validation. And this freedom allows happiness to exist alongside ambition. Chapter 22. Designing a life instead of chasing. 1. Many people spend years chasing a life they believe they are supposed to want. But very few people take the time to design their life intentionally. Designing a life requires asking deeper questions. Not just, what career should I pursue? But, what kind of life do I want my career to support? Not just, how much money do I want to earn? But, what experiences do I want my life to contain? Not just, what will impress others? But, what will actually make my days feel meaningful? These questions shift the focus from achievement to alignment. They turn life from a race into a creative project. And when people begin designing their lives intentionally, something changes. Decisions become clearer. Priorities become stronger. Success becomes integrated into the larger picture of a fulfilling life. Instead of success competing with happiness, success begins supporting happiness. But even with balance, purpose, and clarity, one final lesson remains. A lesson that transforms the entire relationship between success and happiness. Because once someone understands this final truth, they realize that the goal of life was never to choose between the two. The goal was always something deeper, and that deeper understanding is where the journey truly comes full circle. Part 12. The Real Goal, chapters 23 to 24. There is a moment of clarity that sometimes arrives quietly. It may happen after years of chasing goals, after building a career, after achieving things that once felt impossible. A moment when someone stops and asks a question that sounds simple, but changes everything. What is all of this really for? Not just the next promotion, not just the next milestone, but the entire journey. Why pursue success at all? Why wake up early, work hard, sacrifice comfort, and push forward through uncertainty? For some people, the answer is money. For others, it is recognition. For others, security. But eventually, many people discover that those answers are incomplete. Money can solve problems, recognition can open doors, security can reduce stress. But none of them answer the deeper question. What makes a life feel meaningful? And the answer almost always points in the same direction. Connection, contribution, growth, experience. These are the ingredients that transform achievement into a life well lived. Because when success serves these deeper values, something extraordinary happens. Success becomes fuel instead of pressure. Fuel for creativity. Fuel for helping others. Fuel for building things that matter. Fuel for experiences that make life rich. This is when success and happiness finally stop competing. They begin supporting each other. Chapter 23. Success as a tool, not an identity. One of the most powerful shifts a person can make is redefining their relationship with success. Instead of seeing success as who they are, they begin seeing it as something they use, a tool, a resource, a platform. When success becomes identity, everything feels fragile. Mistakes threaten your self-worth. Failure feels personal. Criticism feels devastating. But when success becomes a tool, everything changes. You can experiment freely, you can take risks, you can evolve, because your value no longer depends on maintaining a flawless record of achievements. Your value comes from something deeper: your character, your curiosity, your ability to grow and contribute. This perspective allows success to become healthier. It allows ambition to remain strong without becoming destructive. Because the purpose of success is not to prove your worth. The purpose of success is to expand your ability to live meaningfully, to support your family, to create opportunities, to help others, to explore the world, to invest your energy in things that matter. When success serves life instead of dominating it, happiness naturally grows alongside it. Chapter 24. The Freedom of Authentic Living. Authenticity is one of the rarest forms of freedom, not because it is difficult to understand, but because it requires courage. The courage to choose a path that reflects who you are, even when that path looks different from what others expect. Authentic living means making decisions aligned with your values rather than social pressure. It means pursuing goals that genuinely excite you. It means allowing your life to evolve as you evolve. This does not mean abandoning ambition. In fact, authentic ambition is often stronger because it is driven by passion instead of comparison, by curiosity instead of insecurity, by purpose instead of approval. The people who achieve both success and happiness are rarely the ones who followed the safest path. They are the ones who followed the most honest path, the path that aligned with their identity, the path that allowed them to grow, the path that felt meaningful even when it was difficult. And when you live authentically, something beautiful happens. Success becomes fulfilling. Happiness becomes sustainable. And life begins to feel less like a performance and more like a genuine expression of who you are. But there is one final realization waiting at the end of this journey, a realization that transforms everything we have discussed. Because once you understand this final truth, you will see success and happiness not as opposing forces, but as partners in building a life that truly matters. Part 13. The Final Truth. Chapter 25. There is a truth that many people spend decades discovering, a truth that rarely appears in motivational speeches, a truth that is easy to understand, yet difficult to accept. Success and happiness are not enemies, but they can become enemies when we misunderstand them. Success is not meant to replace happiness, and happiness is not meant to replace ambition. They are meant to work together. Success expands your opportunities. Happiness expands your experience. Success builds the structure of your life. Happiness fills that structure with meaning. Without success, many doors remain closed. Without happiness, those doors lead to empty rooms. This is the balance most people are searching for. But balance is not something you achieve once and keep forever. Balance is something you practice every day through choices, through priorities, through the courage to adjust your direction when necessary. Some days, success will require more attention, deadlines, challenges, moments when you push yourself beyond comfort. Other days, happiness will require more attention, time with people you love, moments of rest, experiences that remind you why life is worth living. The goal is not perfect equilibrium. The goal is awareness. Awareness of when ambition becomes overwhelming. Awareness of when comfort becomes stagnation. Awareness of when your life begins drifting away from the values that truly matter. Because life is not a fixed destination. It is a continuous process of adjustment, learning, growing, realigning, and when you begin living with this awareness, something remarkable happens. The tension between success and happiness begins disappearing. You stop asking which one matters more. You begin asking a better question. How can success support the life I actually want to live? This question transforms everything. It transforms careers into platforms for contribution. It transforms ambition into curiosity. It transforms achievement into opportunity. And most importantly, it transforms success from a stressful chase into a meaningful journey. Because in the end, people rarely regret working hard. They rarely regret building something meaningful, but they often regret forgetting to live while they were building it. The real victory in life is not choosing happiness over success. And it is not choosing success over happiness. The real victory is building a life where both grow together, where ambition fuels purpose, where achievement supports connection, where progress never replaces presence, where success becomes a tool for living well instead of a substitute for life itself. And if there is one final thought to carry with you from this entire audiobook, let it be this. A successful life is not measured only by what you achieve. It is measured by how deeply you experience the life you build. If something in this audiobook resonated with you, pause for a moment and reflect. Which idea changed the way you see success? What part of your life needs more balance right now? And what kind of life do you truly want to build moving forward? Share your thoughts. Because sometimes the most powerful insights come from the reflections we leave behind for others. And if you want more deep explorations of mindset, success, discipline, and personal growth, stay connected. Because every new conversation brings us one step closer to understanding what it really means to live a meaningful life. And remember this, success builds the road. Happiness makes the journey worth taking. Friend, write your opinion on this topic in the comments. Do you agree with us or not? I'm interested to hear your thoughts.